Even if you can escape from the first one because of how good you are, you will escape the difficulties of the extraction of the soul. This one, this next milestone or this next station, which is the crushing of the grave, this one seems to include pretty much everyone unless you are the exceptional exception. Okay, so we have, especially if you go through the life of the Holy Prophet, how he would pray for people who are very close to him. And in certain cases, he would stand and cry, and people say, why did you do that? And he says, it's because I'm asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to not make this person, for my sake, not go through the crushing of the grave. Okay, so this is where we see that even if you were a very good person and you did a lot of good, you may still not escape from this. And there's a lot that we can say here. As we said, this could be an entire lecture or more about Dhaghtat al-Qabr. It looks like it does perform an existential role. Okay, so it's part of the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. And are there exceptions? Of course there are exceptions. The rules that Allah has put in place mean that usually you need a man and a woman to procreate and give birth to a child. But Prophet Isa alayhi salam is born without a father. Are there exceptions? Of course there are exceptions. But the general rule is that to enter that world fully, you have to go through Dhaghtat al-Qabr. It's as though you're being reformatted. Okay? And this is, again, how you go through that is going to be entirely dependent, once again, and I gave you the golden rule last time, the hadith from the Holy Prophet that says, as you lived, so shall you die. And as you died, so shall you be raised, the resurrection. So depending on how you lived, you are going to go through Dhaghtat al-Qabr. So this, once again, is very personal to each of us, but there is certainly a station called Dhaghtat al-Qabr. So I referred simply to it as entering into the next world. A little bit like, to a very different degree, but one way to understand this is like when you think about the fetus, the embryo that becomes a baby and is about to enter into this world. The process of entering this world is not that pleasant for that baby. It's going from one world, and if you read the verses of the Quran and some narrations that talk about this world, it's in a whole world for that child while they are in the womb. The Quran says they are in 3 darknesses, okay? And then they enter into this world. This process of entering into this world is not that pleasant for that child. It's not an easy process, okay? But it seems to be necessary for the proper constitution of the human being to go through that process. It's as though there's something similar that is required to enter that alam of al-Barzakh, okay? What's perhaps more practical for us, once that we understand this, and if we had more time, we would go through the dozens upon dozens of narrations related to Dhaghtat al-Qabr. What's more practical and useful for us, inshallah, is that there are things that you can do to really alleviate Dhaghtat al-Qabr for yourself. First of all, there are special invocations, ad'iyah, and special prayers that you can perform. You are told that these alleviate, simplify, ease Dhaghtat al-Qabr. Okay, so that's one entire theme, an area of work that we need to work on. Okay, that's one. Secondly, the location of the burial makes a difference. So for instance, we do have some reports that if you are buried in Wadi Salam, in Najaf, then you are spared the Dhaghtat al-Qabr out of honor for Imam Ali alayhi salam. Whoever is buried in his vicinity and in his place, this is all, it's as though all of these people are his guests, so they do not go through Dhaghtat al-Qabr. For instance, we have very specific narrations about that. So the location of the burial, you keep in mind, it does make a difference. There are narrations that say that when you are pouring water on the grave of the person who has just deceased, or every time you go visit them, this may alleviate Dhaghtat al-Qabr. That's another one. One that is very important too, we have narrations that say that if you put some of the turbah of Qabr Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, from the grave of Imam al-Hussein, with the person who is deceased, they will not go through Dhaghtat al-Qabr. And finally, where this is one area of work that inshallah, one day we have the blessing and the opportunity to do some lessons on akhlaq, and we'll talk about all of these. There is a specific type of behavior and action that you need to pay special attention to avoid the ضغطة القبر, and this is your family manners. Your manners with your family members, especially as a man with the wife and the children, but in general, your manners with your family members. This is an area, it's as though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that because we spend more time with our families, unfortunately, this is probably the people we should respect the most because we love them the most and we have these blood ties with them and so on and so forth, but we get so used to them and accustomed to them and see them so much and we're into each other's spaces that these are the first people with whom usually the manners are gonna go out the window. And so this is one area where we have specific narrations again and again from the Holy Prophet and from the Imams. You want to alleviate this very difficult station of ضغطة القبر, pay attention to your manners with your family members. Husband and wife, children with their parents, parents with their children. This is going to mean a lot for whether you go through a difficult or an easy ضغطة القبر. And this is different from saying someone prays and fasts and gives charity and performs hajj. All of these have a role to play and a function to play. But when you start drilling into the specific repercussions and outcomes and consequences of certain acts, this is where you start seeing some of these narrations. That you see there's a specific function being played by certain acts, by certain manners, by certain things you do. We're supposed to be good and we're supposed to be, patient all the time, good all the time, perseverant all the time. But there are specific functions to specific manners and behaviors to keep in mind. This is one of them. So that's the whole topic of the entering into the next world.